August 1944. The Allied success in Normandy has fractured German defenses throughout France. General George Patton's Third Army is surging eastward at an astonishing pace, far exceeding any military strategist's predictions, covering 30, 40, at times 50 miles daily. However, an unforeseen predicament has arisen. The advancing armies are outstripping their supply chains. Each Sherman tank consumes 5 gallons of fuel per mile. Every infantry division requires 650 tons of provisions each day, encompassing ammunition, rations, medical supplies, and replacement parts. The port of Cherbourg, still undergoing repairs after German sabotage, can only manage a minuscule portion of the necessary throughput. The subsequent major port, Antwerp, will remain non-operational for months. Consequently, every item, from each bullet to every bandage to each can of beans, must be transported overland by truck from the Normandy beaches, a distance of 350 miles to the front lines, navigating roads demolished by the retreating Germans. At Supreme Headquarters, logistics officers are confronted with alarming figures. Patton's armored units are literally running on fumes. The Third Army's rapid advance has outpaced the capacity of supply vehicles. Within a single week, forward units report a mere 3 days' worth of ammunition remaining. Certain tank battalions are completely immobilized, not due to enemy fire, but because of empty fuel tanks. The situation escalates dramatically when Colonel Frank Ross, Chief of Transportation, briefs General Eisenhower on August 21st. "We are losing 23% of our supplies before they even reach the front," Ross declares. This is due to truck accidents, German aerial assaults, and vehicle breakdowns occurring mid-convoy. He continues, "If Patton halts his advance, the Germans will regroup and reinforce. If he continues without adequate supplies, his army will falter." Eisenhower gazes intently at the map. The opportunity to conclude the war by Christmas is diminishing. He inquires, "How long will it take to rectify this?" The response is grim. Weeks, perhaps months. "We would need to completely re-engineer the convoy system and establish proper maintenance facilities." Eisenhower interjects, "We do not have weeks." His finger traces the red line marking the German border. The Wehrmacht is in retreat now. If we grant them time to regroup, we will be battling through the Siegfried Line in the dead of winter. He surveys the room. "I require solutions within days, gentlemen, not months." The meeting adjourns without any resolution. On that same day, 90 miles from headquarters, Technical Sergeant Ray Kowalski sits in the driver's seat of his GMC Jimmy truck, staring at the devastation of yet another convoy. 8 trucks lie overturned and burned, their cargo strewn across the roadside. A Luftwaffe strafing run had caught them tightly packed on a narrow road, making them easy targets. Kowalski, 34 years old, had been a long-haul trucker from Pittsburgh before the war. Lacking a college degree or any prior military experience, he possessed 15 years of experience hauling steel shipments across Pennsylvania's mountainous terrain in all types of weather and conditions. The Army had drafted him in 1943, provided him with 2 weeks of driver training, and then sent him to France. Now he witnesses brave men perish because the command staff lacks a fundamental understanding of how trucks actually function. He lights a cigarette and recalls a piece of advice from his dispatcher back in Pittsburgh. "Convoys are for show. The real profit is in the spacing." Before we proceed, if you're captivated by the untold innovations that have shaped history, please hit that subscribe button. 75% of you watching are not yet subscribed, and you're missing out on stories like this every week. The official convoy doctrine for the Red Ball Express, the code name for this urgent supply operation, is straightforward. Trucks travel in formations of 20 or more vehicles, spaced 60 yards apart, at a maximum speed of 25 miles per hour. The principle is safety in numbers. Kowalski has driven 6 convoys in the past 2 weeks, each resulting in casualties. The primary issue isn't just the deadly German air attacks, it's what occurs before they even materialize. 20 trucks bunched together on a rural French road create a visible target from 10 miles away. When the lead vehicle spots enemy aircraft, the entire convoy halts. No vehicle can maneuver. The trucks in front are trapped by those behind. The very spacing intended to provide security instead creates a perfect kill zone. However, Kowalski observes something else. On August 23rd, his convoy is delayed at a depot for 6 hours. Some trucks are loaded more quickly than others. A few drivers, impatient with the wait, depart independently once their cargo is secured, without any coordination or organization. These independent drivers reach the Ford supply dump safely, every single one. The official convoy Kowalski eventually joins loses 3 trucks to a German FW-90 attack. He begins to notice a pattern. Independent trucks, traveling alone or in pairs, spread out over several hours, are nearly impossible for German aircraft to target effectively. Even if the Luftwaffe spots one truck, it's not worth the fuel and ammunition to attack a solitary vehicle. A convoy, however, is a target worth engaging. The arithmetic is simple. A convoy of 20 trucks represents one target. 20 individual trucks dispersed over 4 hours of travel time constitute 20 separate hunting opportunities. The Germans have finite aircraft, fuel, and pilots. Kowalski meticulously records his observations in a notebook. Convoys average 23% losses due to accidents, attacks, and breakdowns. In stark contrast, the handful of independent trucks he has tracked experience less than 3% losses. On August 25th, he presents his findings to his company commander, Captain Dennis Hayes. "Sir, I believe I found a way to reduce our supply losses by 90%. Hayes glances at the truck driver standing in his tent, clad in dusty coveralls with oil-stained hands, and utters words that will resonate through military logistics for the next 80 years. "Kowalski, you're a goddamn truck driver. Leave the tactics to the West Point graduates." The official Army rejection arrives in writing. Captain Hayes forwards Kowalski's proposal up the chain of command with a note. Enlisted man suggests abandoning convoy doctrine. Recommend dismissal. The response from battalion headquarters is swift. Convoy procedures are based on established military doctrine. Individual vehicle operations create communication gaps, eliminate mutual support, and violate tactical protocol. Proposal denied. Kowalski reads the memorandum and laughs bitterly. Tactical protocol. He'd been driving trucks since these staff officers were in high school, and now they were lecturing him on vehicle operations. Yet he perseveres. On August 27th, he approaches Lieutenant Colonel Martin Burgess, the Deputy Operations Officer for the Transportation Corps. Burgess listens attentively for 10 minutes before shaking his head. "Ray, I understand your logic, but do you comprehend what transpires if I dispatch trucks individually without an escort? The drivers would be stranded in hostile territory." Burgess taps the map. "These roads are still crawling with bypassed German units. Convoy security extends beyond aerial threats." "Sir, with all due respect," Kowalski responds, "we are losing a quarter of our supplies in convoys that are supposedly secure. I am willing to take my chances operating independently." Burgess replies, "It's not just your chances, it's Army property and strategic material at stake. Look," his voice softens, "I appreciate your initiative, I truly do, but this is not a civilian trucking company. This is military operation. There are reasons we adhere to specific procedures." The tension in the room escalates when Kowalski attempts to present his data during a driver's briefing on August 28th. Other sergeants vociferously object. "Are you trying to get us all killed separately instead of together?" one shouts. "At least in a convoy we have support." Even his fellow drivers consider him to be reckless. The unofficial word spreads through the motor pools. Kowalski has a death wish, wanting to play cowboy on French roads while Luftwaffe fighters are actively hunting. His own squad stops associating with him at meals, but 3 individuals are paying attention. Private First Class James Booker, a driver from Detroit's automotive factories, approaches Kowalski privately. I've been observing the same situation as you. The independent runs are safer. Everyone knows it. They just won't admit it. Two other drivers, Corporal Eddie Martinez and Private Willie Jackson, quietly inform Kowalski that they would volunteer for his proposed method if it were ever approved. It seems it will not matter. On August 29th, Colonel Ross personally reviews the proposal and scrawls across the top, "Denied. Unauthorized deviation from convoy protocol is prohibited. Any driver operating outside established convoy parameters will face court-martial. The official army has spoken. Raymond Kowalski's unconventional idea is dead. Except someone else has been reviewing the reports. Lieutenant General Walter Bedell Smith, Eisenhower's chief of staff, is experiencing sleepless nights in late August 1944. The supply crisis is rapidly approaching catastrophic levels. Patton has been ordered to halt his offensive, not by the Germans, but by a lack of fuel. The British 21st Army Group is rationing ammunition. The window of opportunity to capitalize on the German collapse is narrowing." Smith is the type of officer who scrutinizes everything, including after-action reports from truck companies, casualty statistics from the Red Ball Express, and even proposals from a sergeant in Pennsylvania that everyone else dismissed as preposterous. On August 30th, Smith enters Colonel Ross's office unannounced. This truck driver, Kowalski, his proposal regarding individual dispatch, why was it rejected? Ross is caught off guard. "Sir, it deviates from fundamental convoy doctrine. The vehicles would be—" Smith interrupts. "I have read the doctrine. I am inquiring why we are losing a quarter of our supplies by adhering to it." Ross hesitates. "Well, sir, the casualties are within expected parameters." Smith's voice, sharp enough to cut steel, cuts through the room. "Expected parameters. General Patton's entire army is immobilized because we are accepting expected parameters. Bring me this sergeant immediately." 2 hours later, Raymond Kowalski stands in a headquarters tent facing 3 full colonels and a lieutenant general. He is wearing coveralls that still carry the scent of diesel fuel. He has not shaved in 2 days and is convinced his military career is about to end. Smith wastes no time. "Sergeant, explain your method. Assume I know nothing about trucking." Kowalski takes a deep breath. "Sir, the Germans cannot attack what they cannot predict. Currently, we dispatch 20 truck convoys at scheduled intervals. The Luftwaffe knows our departure times, our routes, and our speeds. They simply position fighters along the route and wait." He withdraws his worn notebook. "However, if we load trucks as rapidly as they arrive at the depot, eliminating waiting time for convoy assembly, and dispatch them immediately at staggered intervals, the Germans will never know when or where to intercept. Instead of 20 trucks tightly packed within a quarter mile, you will have 20 trucks spread across 60 miles of road over 3 hours." Colonel Ross interjects. "What about breakdowns? What about enemy ground forces?" Kowalski replies, "The same solution as currently employed. We still utilize escort jeeps on patrol routes, but a single broken-down truck does not halt 19 others, and a bypass German unit might ambush 1 truck. In a convoy, they would ambush 20. The room falls silent. Smith examines the figures Kowalski has meticulously recorded. Conventional convoys, 23% losses. Independent trucks, 3% losses. Ross argues, "This is anecdotal evidence from a handful of trucks, sir. We need to test it." Smith's decision is immediate. "Sergeant Kowalski, you will conduct a trial operation. 1 week, 20 trucks under your dispatch method. If losses drop below 10%, we will implement it across the board." Ross's face flushes red. "Sir, if this fails, I will accept responsibility. But if it succeeds and we did not try it, that failure is also mine." Smith looks at Kowalski. "You have your chance, Sergeant. Do not squander it." September 1st, 1944. Kowalski stands at the Allenson Supply Depot, observing 20 trucks arriving for loading. This is his test, his singular opportunity. If it fails, men will die, and he will spend the remainder of the war in the stockade. If it succeeds, he might save thousands of lives. The traditional convoy method would operate as follows. All 20 trucks would wait until every vehicle is loaded, typically 4 to 6 hours. Then they would depart together in formation, 60 yards apart, traveling at 25 miles per hour. Travel time to forward dumps, 14 hours. Total time from arrival to delivery, approximately 20 hours. Kowalski's method is radically different. The first truck completes its loading at 600 hours. He does not wait. You're gone, he instructs. Route 7, standard speed, independent operation. The driver appears nervous but nods and rolls out immediately. The second truck finishes at 6:18. Go. The third truck at 6:33. Go. Instead of a convoy departing at noon, Kowalski dispatches 20 trucks between 600 and 1100 hours, 5 hours of staggered departures. At any given moment, they are spread across 90 miles of road, traveling at optimal speeds based on conditions rather than fixed formations. He also modifies the speed regulations. Instead of the mandatory 25-mile-per-hour convoy crawl, he tells experienced drivers, drive at a safe speed. You know these roads now. If you can do 40, do 40. If it's 30, then it's 30. The Transportation Corps' observers are aghast. Colonel Ross's deputy meticulously notes violations, exceeding speed limits, lack of convoy organization, individual vehicle operations in a combat zone. But something remarkable occurs. The trucks begin arriving at forward supply dumps faster than any convoy has ever managed. The first vehicle reaches the 3rd Army Depot at 18:30 hours, 12.5 hours from departure, 90 minutes faster than the convoy average. The last truck arrives at 23:45 hours the following morning. All 20 trucks deliver their cargo. 0 losses, 0 attacks, 1 minor breakdown, a flat tire that the driver changes himself and continues without delaying anyone else. The German Luftwaffe does spot 3 of Kowalski's trucks during the run, but intercepting a single truck requires a fighter to divert from patrol, hunt down 1 target, and expend ammunition for a minimal payoff. 2 pilots do not bother. The third makes 1 strafing pass, misses, and returns to base rather than wasting fuel on pursuit. Day 2. Another 20 trucks. 19 successful deliveries, 1 accident. A driver falls asleep and crashes, but it is a solitary vehicle loss, not a multi-truck pileup as convoy accidents often cause. Loss rate, 5%. Day 3. 22 trucks, 22 deliveries, 0 losses. By day 5, even the skeptical colonels are observing the statistics with disbelief. Kowalski's seemingly absurd method is reducing supply losses from 23% to less than 3%, a 90% reduction, and trucks are transporting cargo more rapidly than anyone had previously imagined possible. On September 7th, General Smith issues the order. All Red Ball Express operations will immediately adopt staggered individual dispatch protocols as developed by Technical Sergeant Ray Kowalski. The transformation occurs almost overnight. By mid-September, the entire Red Ball Express, comprising nearly 6,000 trucks, has abandoned traditional convoy operations. Depots load and dispatch vehicles continuously around the clock. Trucks depart every 3 to 5 minutes, rather than massing into vulnerable formations. The statistics are astounding. In the final 8 weeks of Red Ball Express operations, from September through November 1944, supply losses dropped to 2.7%. Delivery speed increased by 32%. The volume of supplies reaching Patton's Third Army and other frontline units more than doubled. German after-action reports reflect their frustration. A Luftwaffe squadron commander writes in October, Allied supply trucks now operate with no predictable pattern. Individual vehicle interdiction is an inefficient use of limited air resources. Recommend focusing fighter operations on tactical ground support rather than logistics harassment. The Americans have rendered truck hunting economically unfeasible for the overstretched Luftwaffe. For every German fighter dispatched to intercept scattered trucks, 1 less aircraft is available to defend against Allied bombers or support ground troops. The Germans simply cannot afford the trade-off. But the impact extends beyond mere statistics. The Red Ball Express, now employing Kowalski's staggered dispatch method, delivers 412,193 tons of supplies in 82 days of operation. This is sufficient ammunition, fuel, and equipment to sustain 6 Allied armies advancing across France and into Germany. Patton's Third Army alone receives enough fuel to drive from Normandy to the German border. Historians will later debate whether Allied logistics or combat prowess secured victory in Europe. The answer is both. But logistics made the combat possible, and Kowalski's method made the logistics sustainable. The system expands beyond the Red Ball Express. By November, trucking operations across all Allied theaters are adopting staggered dispatch. The British Eighth Army in Italy tests the method and reports comparable results. Even Pacific Theater logistics planners begin studying the approach for island-hopping operations. In late October, a captured German staff officer near Aachen is interrogated about supply operations. When questioned about Allied trucking, he shakes his head in frustration. "We cannot target what we cannot predict," he states through a translator. "Your trucks are like ghosts now, everywhere and nowhere. We have stopped even trying to intercept them. It's a waste of fuel we do not have." That quote finds its way into intelligence summaries and eventually reaches Eisenhower's desk. The Supreme Commander circles it and scribbles a note to Smith. This sergeant's method is forcing the Germans to concede the logistics battle. Recommend formal recognition. On November 18, 1944, 2 days after the Red Ball Express officially concludes its operations, Technical Sergeant Ray Kowalski receives the Bronze Star Medal for exceptional meritorious service in support of combat operations. The citation specifically commends his innovative tactical logistics methods that significantly reduced supply losses and enhanced operational effectiveness. Ray Kowalski returns to Pittsburgh in 1946. He resumes his previous profession, driving trucks, the same job he held before the war. There are no book deals, no speaking tours, just a Bronze Star Medal tucked away in a drawer and memories of a few weeks in France when his audacious idea actually worked. However, the military does not forget. The U.S. Army Transportation Corps formally adopts staggered dispatch protocols as official doctrine in 1947. The method becomes mandatory instruction at Fort Lee, Virginia, the transportation school, where every logistics officer learns about the Pittsburgh truck driver who fundamentally reshaped convoy theory. During the Korean War, the Berlin Airlift, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq, and Afghanistan, American logistics operations utilize variations of Kowalski's method. Modern military supply convoys no longer congregate into large, vulnerable formations. Instead, they operate with dispersed timing, varied routes, and unpredictable patterns. The principle has evolved with technology. Today's military trucks are equipped with GPS tracking, satellite communication, and encrypted coordination systems. But the core concept, making the enemy's interdiction efforts economically inefficient by dispersing your logistics footprint, remains precisely what Kowalski deduced in a notebook while observing convoys ablaze. Civilian trucking has also benefited. The modern logistics industry's just-in-time delivery systems, staggered scheduling, and distributed warehouse networks all trace their intellectual lineage to the same insight: bunching creates vulnerability, spacing creates resilience. Companies such as Amazon, FedEx, and UPS dispatch vehicles continuously throughout the day rather than in scheduled waves. It is more efficient, harder to disrupt, and scales better. They likely do not realize they are employing a method conceived by a truck driver during World War II, but they are. In 2003, the U.S. Army Transportation Museum at Fort Lee opened an exhibit dedicated to the Red Ball Express. It features a section devoted to Ray Kowalski. His notebook, the very one where he meticulously tracked convoy losses and calculated the crucial figures, is displayed in a glass case. Adjacent to it is a photograph of him standing beside his GMC Jimmy truck, cigarette in hand, looking precisely like what he was: a working-class driver who understood his profession far better than the so-called experts. The sign proclaimed, "Often, the most groundbreaking advancements originate not from military leaders or strategic thinkers, but from those actively engaged in the work." Kowalski passed away in 1983 at the age of 73. His death notice in Pittsburgh's Post-Gazette acknowledged his Bronze Star but offered no details regarding the actions that warranted its bestowal. He was simply a retired chauffeur, a former soldier, a reserved individual who had fulfilled his obligations. Yet, in every contemporary military logistics curriculum, in every scholarly paper on World War II supply efforts, and in every examination of how the Allied forces maintained their progression through Europe, a reference exists to the sergeant who demonstrated that the most outlandish concepts are sometimes the unvarnished realities others were unwilling to acknowledge. His innovative approach not only reduced loss rates for transported goods by 90%, but also revolutionized the way the contemporary world handles the movement of everything from armaments to everyday merchandise. It remains in practice presently, continuing to preserve lives and rendering the adversary's efforts prohibitively expensive. This all stemmed from a single truck operator from Pittsburgh who declined to accept that convoys represented the sole viable option.